Welcome back. It's a really stressful time right now. So many people are dealing with, the unexpected difficulty that we are in during this pandemic. How do we cope? How do we move forward? Our next guest says that resilience is key. Please welcome back to the show, happiness researcher Gillian Mandich. Hey, Gillian.
Hi, Marcy. How are you? Hi, Jess. Nice to see you.
Hi, thank you
Hi.
so much for chatting with us. Now, you say to combat the stress of this pandemic that we're in, we need to do it with resilience. What do you mean by that, and why is it important right now?
Yeah, the fact of the matter is life happens, right? It's not always easy. And so, whether it be a pandemic or a difficult time, it's not about removing or not having those times in our life. It's more a question of how do we respond to them. And so, resilience is our ability to respond to the challenges and the difficulties that life throws at us. It's our ability to bounce back. It's really about knowing that no matter what happens, I have the skills and the ability to overcome, to bounce back. And resilience, not only is it good in terms of impacting our mental health, but it also affects our physical health. So a recent research review found that when we are more resilient, it improves things like our stress response, our immune function, how we heal, and even it decreases mortality rates.
And I hear you, Jillian, about resilience being important, but it also takes a certain amount of strength to be resilient. And I have to say, during this time of COVID, coupled with the Black Lives Matter movement, I haven't felt so strong all the time. So tell us about moving forward with resilience during traumatic life events.
Yeah, so when we have difficult or traumatic life events, whether it be living in a pandemic or a divorce or a job loss or anything, resilience isn't about how we're tested in that. It's our response to what happens that either strengthens our resilience or it doesn't. So in 2008, there was a study done with bankers during the big financial crisis. And what they found was, not surprisingly, a lot of the bankers were really stressed out. But then there was this smaller group of bankers that were actually happy and resilient through this difficult, traumatic time. And so researchers wanted to investigate and find out, well, what's going on? Are these people different or not? And what they found was that the only difference between the stressed out bankers and the resilient bankers was that the resilient bankers saw problems as challenges to overcome, not as threats. And so what this means is that we're going to go through difficult and traumatic times, and the lens that we view the situation, it really matters. And so instead of seeing problems as threats to us, if we can look at them as a challenge, that's going to help us to boost resilience and to get through those difficult times.
Jillian, is there a link between resilience and happiness? And if people are more resilient in life, will they be more or more happy rather in the long run?
Yes. So when we look at resilience and happiness, they're really highly correlated. And yes, both resilience and happiness have a genetic component. They have a component that's impacted by our environment, but both of them are also skills that can be cultivated and grown. So no matter how happy or unhappy you're feeling right now, or how resilient or not resilient right now, each and every one of us has the capacity to actually boost that. And so this model that a colleague of mine, Dr. Ramit Billen, and I created, it kind of helps us to visually understand the relationship between happiness and resilience. So what happens is when we start to practice happiness and we boost that skill, our happiness starts to go up. And then life throws us a curveball. A challenge happens, a setback happens, and we see a drop in our happiness. What happens there is the resilience piece. So resilience is how we bounce back or how we cope with that challenge or setback. And as we start to strengthen that skill of resilience, what happens is the time that it takes us to bounce back is compressed. It takes less time. And then from there, the question becomes, well, how high? So for some people, they want to get back to where they were before. And for other people, they want to grow from these experiences, and that's called thriving. So thriving is really this growth-oriented process where we move from survival into flourishing.
So, Jillian, if resilience is related to happiness, is there also then a link to pleasure?
Yes, yes. So pleasure can be really connected with resilience. And one of the ways that we can practice boosting resilience using pleasure is through a technique called savoring. So savoring is when we really start to feel and embody and celebrate those positive or good feelings. So it's not just about noticing them, it's about fully experiencing and embodying them. So it's not just enjoying time with your friends. It's about really feeling what that feels like, feeling it in every cell in your body, enjoying that time. And the research out of Australia found that Savoring and resilience are really highly correlated. And so not only does savoring increase positive emotions, which feels good, but it can also help us to endure difficult times and can also increase longevity.
Women in particular, Jillian, are often strong for others, sometimes to their own detriment. Sometimes there's a personal cost that comes with that. Is there a difference when it comes to resilience here? And the other part of this is, what are the dangers of feeling the pressure to be strong all the time?
Yeah, one of the things when we feel, for example, the pressure to be the strong one, or any label for that matter, whether it be the calm one or the fiery one, is that we're playing into a role. We can be more like playing a character as opposed to expressing who we truly are. And when that happens, we can get into a dangerous territory because it's a slippery slope into feeling like we're going through the motions of life or we're doing what we should do as opposed to what we actually want to do. And so when that happens, that can have a really detrimental effect on our mental health. And so what happens is the question becomes awareness, because sometimes we don't even realize that we feel like we have to be the strong one to get through. So taking some time to reflect on our actions and our thoughts and what we're doing, and asking ourselves and getting really honest with ourselves with questions like, do I feel like there's areas in my life where I'm feeling like I have to play a role? Do I feel like I'm fully able to express who I am and how I'm feeling? And if I do feel like, I have to be the strong one, for example, asking myself, why is that? Because awareness is the first step and a really key piece to any type of behavior change. And when we do that, we can start to use that to be more who we are and to use that to boost our resilience.
Okay, let's get practical. What are some strategies that we can start using today to become more resilient?
I love this, Jess, right? Because we want to know, what can we do? So the good news is research really confirms that we can cultivate and grow more resilience in our life. So a couple ways that we can do that is, first of all, is to focus on self. And because just like happiness, resilience starts within. So one of the things that we can do is build self-trust. So self-trust is knowing that no matter what life throws at me, I know that I have the skills and abilities to get through everything. And so how do we build self-trust? Well, one of the ways is to think about times in the past when we've had a difficult situation and remind ourselves that we were able to overcome it, because it provides evidence that we can get through. So say, for example, we've lived through a recent pandemic. And so what happened when it hit, right? We learned new routines. We learned new ways to live and to work. We were able to get through. So reminding ourselves of that, what that does is it provides evidence and support of, I've done this before, so I can do it again. Another thing, and this is a really key one, is focusing on what we can control. Because, let's face it, right? Like, there's a lot of things that happen in our life that we can't control. And there are certain things that we can. And no matter what happens, whether we can control it or not, we can always control our response to what's happening. And so in research, we have this term called autonomy. And autonomy is knowing that my thoughts and my actions and my behaviors are self-chosen, that I have the control to choose those things. And autonomy matters so much, especially in terms of our happiness, that it has more of an impact on our happiness than how good looking we are, how much money we have, how popular we are, and how good our sex life is. So reminding ourselves that we need to focus on the areas that we can control and choosing to try to give more of our attention and more of our effort there on a regular basis. And then finally, one last thing is that, we don't have to go through this alone. And so seeking support sometimes, looking for new strategies, talking to a trusted psychologist or registered psychotherapist, they can work with us to really build and cultivate strategies that are unique and personal for us so that we can start to boost our resilience that way.
That is a really reassuring note to end on. Thank you so much for chatting with us today, Gillian, and we'll be right back.
Thank you.